제주도는 지금으로부터 약 180만 년 전에 화산활동으로 만들어지기 시작한 섬입니다. 그러한 화산활동들은 제주도에서 무수히 반복적으로 발생했고 그 결과물로 지금 여기서 보시는 것과 같은 기이한 형태의 돌들이 제주도 도처에 분포하고 있습니다. 이러한 돌 자원조차도 제주도가 가지고 있는 가치 있는 자원이 될 수 있겠습니다. 화산섬 제주도에는 360여 개의 오름들과 이들 오름에서 뿜어져 나온 용암들이 형성한 해안의 빌레 그리고 중산간의 고자월 등이 분포합니다. 이러한 제주도가 가진 특이한 지형들은 세계자연유산, 지질공원과 같은 세계적인 브랜드로 제주도를 널리 홍보하는 자원이 된 것입니다.
화산 분출로 만들어진 제주섬은 지금 현재 제주 사람들에게 천혜의 자연 환경을 만들어주기도 했지만 이 땅을 터전으로 살아가는 제주민들에게는 굉장한 장애 요인이었습니다. 하지만 제주민들은 이러한 장애적인 요소인 돌을 가지고 주거 문화는 물론 이런 일상생활용구 그리고 정신세계를 지배하고 있는 산땀이라든지 신당 문화에 이르기까지 독특한 제주의 돌 문화를 만들어가면서 이러한 장애 요인을 극복해갔다고 할 수 있겠습니다.
The incessant volcanic eruptions that happened in the middle of the ocean inevitably covered the whole island with rocks. In consequence, whether the Jeju people liked it or not, these rocks were unavoidable obstacles that they had to overcome as part of their destiny in order to survive in a harsh, unforgiving land. On the flip side, the rocks could be used to their utmost advantage. In an isolated land where there was a lack of food and difficult passage to the mainland, agriculture was of the utmost importance. One thing that they had in abundance were the rocks. They picked out these rocks from the ground and made fences with them. With such efforts, the people literally killed two birds with one stone, as the land was free of rocks to begin farming, and it also resolved the conflict between neighboring landowners by setting clear boundaries. The stone walls also had the added advantage of protecting the farm produce from wayward cattle and horses. Not only that, in the summer and fall, it acted as a barrier against typhoons while blocking the fierce and bitter winds that came from the north in the winter. At first glance, these stone walls may appear to have been piled up haphazardly with careless holes in between, but by actually letting the wind pass through these apertures, they were able to withstand even the strongest winds. These stones were used even in the building of fences around graves. The inner sanctum of this fence belonged to the dead. The fences were lovingly built, stone by stone, by the village people, all pitching in. Several layers of rocks were piled up, and the holes that were created in between were wedged with smaller-sized rocks, enabling the wall to spread out. The walls were not that high, but the sheer expense of the wall prevented any horse from venturing to jump over it from a psychological point of view. This ultimately prevented any harm coming to the grass and the grave that lay within the wall. A gateway, however, was created for the soul of the dead to pass through in the wall. It was believed that these souls would visit the house of the living a couple of times a year after eating and drinking the food prepared by the living. Hence, the necessity of the door was created. They made statues of young page boys and set it up on either side of the grave within the wall. These stone page boys would be carrying wine flasks that the dead would have liked while they were living, or they may be carrying various other things such as birds and flowers. The specific dwelling for the dead would be established on odums, which refer to parasitic volcanoes in the Jeju language. The stones to build these walls for the creating of the dwelling for the dead were collected from the 368 odums that are scattered about the island. For many Jeju people, odums are playgrounds of their childhood, as well as being the fields that provide grass for cattle and horses. While they are resting in peace here, they can watch the cows and horses grazing, as well as the people running around in a carefree way. Some daily items were also made with stones. One unique example was the pig trough. Pigs have the tendency to topple over everything and making a mess when they're sensitive. However, the stone trough put an end to this problem. It didn't rot, change form, and was too heavy to topple over. It would have been difficult to find any material more appropriate than this. It was usual for pirates to come to Jeju to pillage for food. To protect the island from such savage invaders, stone walls were built along the coastline to deter them. The rocks that were lying in abundance along the shore became the perfect material for the people's purposes. Other than these stone grandfathers, stone towers were piled up to stop any evil spirits invading the village. These towers were called pangsatap and were sometimes built at the village entrance or at the beaches. The sea was an abundant source of food for the people living there, but it was also a fearful presence that took away lives cruelly. Therefore, they built stone towers to stop the bad karma flowing into the village along the beaches as well as the village gate. They used the rocks that were scattered about just as it is, with a fervent wish and prayer for the well-being of all individuals in the village. Another way that the stones were used were to thresh the grains. On a big round stone, another smaller wheel-like stone was placed, which would then be pulled by a horse. The smaller stone would roll along the bigger stone underneath repeatedly, whereby the grain that was placed between the two stones would get threshed effectively. If there were no horses for some households, two people would pull and push on an alternative basis to substitute the role of the horse. Jeju had very little interaction with the mainland, considering the vast distance. It was because of this distance that a unique culture and various myths were born. The stones in a volcanic island were used in a variety of essential ways. In addition, these stones reflect the myth of the giant goddess and her 500 sons, with Hala Mountain as their background. If you pay attention to the Jeju stones and what it represents, you will find that nature speaks to you, overcoming any language barrier. We urge you to take a moment to think about the infinite love of a mother and nature's beauty within this myth.